Imagine for a second that you are facing an opponent who is just, twice your size. They have infinitely more resources, and they want nothing more than to completely dismantle your business, your career, or, just your big project.
Right. The ultimate nightmare scenario.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And conventional wisdom, like the way most of us are wired, tells you to just brace for impact. You put your head down, you gather whatever strength you have, and you fight back.
You go head to head.
Yeah. And maybe you survive, but the process leaves you completely exhausted, totally drained, and just staring at a mountain of collateral damage.
Oh, absolutely. It's a grinding way to live.
But what if there was a completely different approach? Like a terrifyingly effective alternative where you don't fight them at all.
Wait, not at all?
Not at all. Instead, you manipulate their reality so thoroughly that they literally end up defeating themselves.
Now, that is a massive hook.
Right. Well, welcome to Bookend Podcast, the Library of Successes. Today, we are handing you the ultimate secret weapon to step out of that exhausting cycle of conflict. It's actually a text written 2,400 years ago on literal strips of bamboo.
Which is just wild to think about.
It really is. And it has guided everyone from ancient warlords to modern Wall Street executives. And, well, today we are going to break down exactly how it works.
Yeah, it is an absolute masterpiece of strategy. We are, of course, unpacking Sun Tzu's The Art of War, but to really understand the mechanics of this, we aren't looking at just any modern version.
Right, we're getting specific.
Exactly. We are diving into the meticulous 1910 translation by the British scholar Lionel Giles, because our goal today is to look past all the, corporate cliches and figure out the actual physics of turning an opponent's momentum against them, so you can secure the victory before the battle ever actually begins.
Man, I am so ready for this. But before we get into the actual tactics, like the deception, the spies, all that crazy stuff, we have to ground this in reality. Because you mentioned bamboo strips, and the origins of this text are just shrouded in so much myth.
Oh, heavily shrouded.
Do we even know for a fact that a guy named Sun Tzu's actually sat down and wrote this?
Well, it's highly debated, actually. Master Sun, or Sun Tzu's, is an incredibly enigmatic figure. Many historians believe he wasn't a single historical person at all.
Really? Like a pseudonym?
Kind of. More like a persona used to collect the collective military wisdom of a very specific, very brutal era in Chinese history. It's known as the Warring States period. We're talking around the 5th century BC.
Right. Because this wasn't exactly a peaceful time of philosophical debate, right?
Right.
The central authority of the Zhou dynasty was collapsing. It was just a massive power vacuum.
Total collapse. The peripheral states were literally tearing each other apart just to survive. It was an era of constant high-stakes warfare. The survival of entire populations depended on figuring out how to outmaneuver neighboring armies.
That is so intense.
It was. So you have to understand these strategies weren't just academic exercises. They were written in the mud and the blood of those killing fields, jotted down on narrow slips of bamboo and tied together with string.
Wow, that really paints a dark picture of where these ideas come from. But there is a famous legend about Master Sun as a real living general, isn't there? The one recorded by the ancient historian Sima Qian.
Yes, there is. And while modern historians view it as probably apocryphal, it perfectly encapsulates the ruthless pragmatism of the text.
Okay, lay it on me.
So the story goes that Sun Tzu presented his 13 chapters of The Art of War to the king of Wu, and the king read them and was impressed, but, he wanted a practical demonstration.
Naturally, show me it works.
Right. So he asked Sun Tzu, "Can your theories of discipline and command be applied to anyone, even women?" And Sun Tzu calmly replied that they could. So the king offered up his royal harem of 180 concubines for a military drill.
Wait, hold on. He tested a serious military theory on a royal harem?
Yep.
How did he expect that to actually work? I can't imagine they took it seriously.
Oh, they absolutely didn't take it seriously. Sun Tzu divided the women into 2 companies and put the king's 2 absolute favorite concubines in charge as the commanders.
Okay, setting the stage.
Yeah. He armed them all with halberds, explained the basic facing movements like right turn, left turn, about face, and asked if they understood. They said yes. So the drums beat and Sun Tzu gave the first order. And the women just burst out laughing.
Which is a completely natural reaction to an absurd situation, right?
Yeah, exactly what you'd expect.
Yeah.
But Sun Tzu, he didn't get angry at all. He calmly stated to the king, if words of command are not clear and distinct, if orders are not thoroughly understood, the general is to blame.
Okay, taking responsibility, that's good leadership.
Right. So he patiently explained the drill a second time, really making sure everyone understood the stakes. The drums beat again, he gave the order, and once again, the women just giggled and totally ignored him.
Oh, man. Okay, he took the blame the first time. What's his move now?
Now he flips the script. He says, if orders are clear and the soldiers nevertheless disobey, then it is the fault of their officers.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and right then and there, despite the king sending down frantic messages to stop him, Sensei had the two favorite concubines, the newly appointed commanders, beheaded on the spot.
Oh my God. He literally executed the king's favorites just to prove a point about chain of command.
He did. He appointed two new commanders from the ranks, the drums beat a third time, and as Simakian writes, the women performed the drill with absolute terrifying precision. They didn't dare to utter a single sound.
That is just brutal.
It really established the myth of Sun Tzu as a general of uncompromising, almost mechanical discipline.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this brings us to what I think is the most bizarre contradiction in this entire story. You have this ancient, blood-soaked myth of a guy executing concubines to demand absolute dominance.
Right.
And who becomes the definitive voice to translate his work into the English language. A quiet, mild-mannered museum curator named Lionel Giles, just working in the reading rooms of the British Museum in 1910.
It is quite the contrast.
It's like finding out a quiet local librarian was the one who translated the secret manifesto of a cartel boss.
Yeah.
How does Giles end up being the guy?
I know, it sounds like a complete mismatch.
Yes.
But Giles's personality was actually the key that unlocked the text for the West. You see, Giles was not a combat veteran. He spent his days poring over the Dunhuang scrolls.
What were those again?
It was this massive cache of ancient, very fragile manuscripts discovered in a cave in China. So he did that all day, and he spent his evenings just gardening near his home in Watford. But he possessed a deep philosophical grounding. He famously admitted to a friend that he was a Taoist at heart.
A Taoist at heart. Okay, let's look at that for a second.
Oh.
Because Taoism is largely about flow, right? Like the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
Yielding to the natural order of things rather than trying to, I don't know, punch a hole right through a brick wall.
Precisely. And because Giles understood that philosophy so deeply, he didn't make the mistake of reading The Art of War purely as a brute force field manual.
Like the earlier translators did.
Exactly. Previous translations tried to force it into this Western Napoleonic box of glorious cavalry charges and battlefield heroics. Giles realized that Sun Tzu was essentially applying proto-Taoist principles to conflict. He saw that the book was fundamentally about harmony, reading the environment, and understanding the natural dynamics of a situation.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, and Giles actually dedicated the 1910 translation to his brother Valentine, who was an active soldier, because he believed these underlying principles of energy and flow were universal, even in modern warfare.
Which leads us right into the core thesis of the book, which honestly turns everything we think about conflict completely upside down.
It really does.
Because if you buy a book called The Art of War, you assume it's going to teach you how to fight really well. But Sun Tzu argues the exact opposite. He says that actual physical combat is a symptom of failure.
It is the ultimate paradox. Giles translates a beautiful poetic line to capture this. He says, "To lift an autumn hair is no sign of great strength. To see sun and moon is no sign of sharp sight." True excellence, according to Master Sun, isn't fighting and winning 100 battles. The absolute acme of skill is subduing your enemy without fighting at all.
So if you are relying on a chaotic, bloody brawl where anything can happen, you've already mismanaged the situation. You failed to read the board.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? How do you actually win without fighting? What is the actual mechanism?
Well, the mechanism is mastering what Giles translates as energy or momentum, which is the Chinese concept of shi. In Chapter 5, Sun Tzu uses a brilliant physical analogy. He likens strategic energy to the bending of a crossbow.
Okay, let's visualize that. If you're cranking back a heavy siege crossbow, notch by notch, it takes time, it takes leverage.
A lot of effort.
Right. You are building up this massive reservoir of potential energy in the background, entirely unseen by the target.
That's the perfect way to look at it. The bending of the crossbow represents all your strategic positioning. It's the logistics, the alliances, getting the high ground. The decision to actually strike is simply releasing the trigger.
And the trigger pull is tiny.
Exactly. The trigger pull is a tiny, effortless movement, just the flick of a finger. But because of all that stored energy, the result is devastating and immediate. Sun Tzu also compares this dynamic to rolling a round stone down a mountain thousands of feet high.
I love that one. So instead of spending all your energy trying to push a heavy boulder up a hill, which, let's be honest, is what most of us do in an argument or a business rivalry, you maneuver yourself to the top of the mountain. You let gravity and the environment do the work for you.
It's strategic physics. You don't defeat the opponent with your own raw strength. You let their weight and the steepness of the hill defeat them.
Is there a historical example in the sources of someone actually doing this? Because the boulder analogy is great, but I want to see it in action.
Oh, there's an incredible story from 11th century Japan about a warrior named Minamoto Yoshi that illustrates this perfectly.
Okay, tell me about Yoshi.
So Yoshi was marching his army to attack a rival's fortress. As his troops were approaching a really dense forest, Yoshi suddenly halted. He looked up and noticed a flock of wild geese rising into the air above the trees in a very disordered, panicked flight pattern.
Wait, he's looking at birds while he's marching to war.
Yes, because he was a dedicated student of the art of war. He wasn't just looking at birds, he was reading the energy of the environment. He knew that geese don't naturally scatter like that unless they are suddenly startled by something large and metallic beneath them.
Oh, wow.
Right. He deduced simply from the flight of the birds that enemy soldiers were hiding in the woods, just waiting to ambush his column.
That is wild. He spotted the ambush without a single scout seeing an enemy soldier. So what did he do?
He immediately rerouted his entire army, bypassed the forest completely, and caught the enemy from behind while they were still waiting for him to walk into their trap. He secured the victory through pure observation and psychology before his swords even left their scabbards.
He read the board. He didn't push the boulder, he stepped out of its way.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put it in those terms, it makes total sense why this 2,400-year-old text became the absolute Bible for corporate raiders in the 1980s.
Oh, big time.
I'm thinking of Gordon Gekko in the movie Wall Street, who literally quotes the book, saying, "Every battle is won before it is fought."
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the historian Joseph Needham called it exactly that, a duel of minds. It's about outthinking the opponent's capacity to react. It shifts the arena completely away from physical brawn.
But this is where we hit a massive speed bump. Because if the goal is to win without fighting, and you achieve that by manipulating the environment and the opponent's psychology, the primary tool to get there is actually incredibly controversial. We have to talk about the dark side of this strategy. We have to talk about deception.
We do, and Sun Tzu does not mince words or apologize for it. He states categorically, all warfare is based on deception. It isn't just a tactic, it is the foundation of the entire system.
How does that play out practically? Like, what are the actual levers you pull to deceive someone that thoroughly?
Sun Tzu outlines a system of constant misdirection. When you are fully capable of attacking, you must seem entirely unable. When you are near, you make the enemy believe you are far away.
Total illusion.
Exactly. You hold out baits to entice them. If your opponent has a choleric, angry temper, you deliberately irritate them to make them arrogant and sloppy. He categorizes all these approaches into what he calls direct and indirect methods.
Direct and indirect. Define those for me.
The direct method is exactly what it sounds like, engaging the enemy frontally, the obvious expected move. But the indirect method involves the flank, the surprise, the psychological manipulation. And to explain how they work together, Sun Tzu uses these beautiful artistic metaphors.
Like what?
Well, he says there are only 5 primary colors, but combined in different ways, they produce more hues than the human eye can ever see. There are only 5 musical notes in the ancient scale, but their combinations create infinite melodies.
Okay, I see. So you mix the direct frontal assault with an indirect psychological trick, and you create a scenario the opponent has never seen before and just cannot predict.
Exactly. They loop into each other endlessly. A direct attack can suddenly become a feint. An indirect maneuver can harden into a real strike. It keeps the enemy entirely off balance. But, while the metaphors of music and color are beautiful, the application is undeniably dark.
Right, because this leans heavily into an ancient Chinese school of thought called legalism, doesn't it? And legalism is not exactly warm and fuzzy.
Not at all. Legalism was a philosophical framework that essentially argued morality is useless in matters of state. It posited that people are fundamentally self-interested, and the only thing that matters is raw power, ruthless efficiency, and strict adherence to the law.
No room for honor, then?
None. It completely stripped away any romantic notions of chivalry on the battlefield. You do whatever it takes to win, period. Now, to be clear, we are just impartially reporting what the source material says here. We're not endorsing this worldview.
Oh, absolutely. We're just exploring the ideas. And I imagine the more traditional philosophers in ancient China were horrified by this, right?
They absolutely were. The prominent Confucian philosopher Sun Tzu heavily critiqued this entire approach. Confucians believed that a healthy state relied on the moral virtue of its leader radiating outward. Sun Tzu argued that the troops of a benevolent man should never rely on deceit. He believed that if you win through trickery, you might win the battle, but you lose your legitimacy to rule.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because when you look at those 5 notes of deception today, combining basic psychological triggers to manipulate a target, it sounds identical to modern social media algorithms.
Oh, that's a brilliant comparison.
Right. We see massive populations being played like a fiddle because someone knows exactly which emotional buttons to press to make them angry or scared or distracted. It asks a really uncomfortable question. The book demands you act like water fluid, adaptable, natural, but it requires you to use that deep understanding of human nature to ruthlessly exploit people's flaws.
What's fascinating here is that tension is the profound ethical dilemma at the heart of the art of war. The text itself does not judge. It is an engineering manual for power. It provides the mechanics, but it acts as a mirror for your own ethics.
It builds you the engine, but it refuses to tell you where to drive the car.
Exactly. But here is the glaring flaw in a strategy based purely on deception. It completely falls apart if your opponent sees through the illusion. A trap only works if the prey doesn't know it's a trap. So how did Sun Tzu guarantee the enemy bought the lie?
Well, he needed perfect, flawless information. He needed to know what the enemy knew before they even knew it.
Precisely. And that brings us to the final and arguably most intense chapter of the text, the use of spies. Sun Tzu explicitly states that this kind of critical foreknowledge cannot be elicited from spirits, it cannot be prayed for, and it cannot be guessed through deductive calculation.
Where does it come from?
It can only be obtained from men. You need a highly organized, heavily funded intelligence network.
He breaks down 5 specific classes of spies,
Yeah.
right? You have local spies, which is using the inhabitants of a district. Inward spies, turning the enemy's own officials. Converted spies, which is flipping enemy agents to work as double agents. Surviving spies, who bring back news from the camp.
Right.
But the 5th class, the one that absolutely stopped me in my tracks, is the doomed spy.
The doomed spy is a concept of terrifying, brutal brilliance. It is the purest distillation of legalist efficiency.
Okay, let me walk through the mechanics of this to make sure I understand just how dark it is. Let's say you want the enemy to think you were attacking from the north, but you're actually attacking from the south. You don't just leak a fake memo.
No, that's too simple.
You actively build a fake camp in the north. You formulate a fake battle plan. And you do it so convincingly that your own spies, your own people, believe it is the absolute truth. Then, you send them into enemy territory, fully knowing they'll be captured and interrogated. Am I getting that right?
You are. You intentionally feed your own loyal agents a lie. When they are captured and tortured by the enemy, they unknowingly report the false information. And their testimony is incredibly convincing because they believe it to be true.
They aren't acting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They will pass any polygraph, survive any interrogation, and convince the enemy commander because there is no deception in their eyes. They aren't lying.
But the reason they are called doomed is because once the trap is sprung, once the enemy realizes you actually attacked from the south and they were fed a lie, the enemy's commander is going to execute that spy in a rage.
Yes.
You are knowingly sending your own person to their death just to deliver a lie. And Sun Tzu even adds a caveat, doesn't he? If the secret leaks too early, before the trap is ready.
If the secret leaks early, Sun Tzu says you must put your own spy to death immediately, along with anyone they told, just to maintain the illusion and silence the leak. It is the ultimate cold-blooded sacrifice of the individual for the strategic goal of the state.
That is chilling. But I mean, if you strip away the life or death stakes and look at the mechanism, you see this in modern corporate strategy all the time.
Oh, everywhere.
Imagine a massive tech company that wants to throw a rival off the scent of their new flagship product. The CEO intentionally leaks a highly detailed fake schematic for a totally different product. Maybe they leave a prototype on a bar stool, or they confide in an employee they know has a big mouth and talks to the press.
Right, the unwitting accomplice.
Exactly. The employee thinks they have the inside scoop. They leak it. The competitor scrambles, diverts millions of dollars in R&D to counter this fake product, going on a massive wild goose chase.
It is the exact same mechanic, just translated to the boardroom. Master Sun calls this entire interwoven intelligence system the divine manipulation of the threads. He insists that in the whole army, no one should be rewarded more liberally, and no business should be kept more absolute secret than espionage.
Because without it, you're blind.
Right, because without that information, you cannot manipulate the energy. You are just guessing. You are back to pushing the boulder up the hill.
But thinking about those doomed spies, this raises an important question. The most famous quote from the book is, "Know your enemy and know yourself, and you need not fear the result of 100 battles." But if you are building these massive illusions, if you are deceiving your own people and layering lies upon lies, how much of your own reality are you sacrificing? At what point do you lose yourself in the funhouse mirrors of your own deception?
That is the ultimate risk. You master the environment, but you might lose your own grounding in reality entirely.
And I think that perfectly encapsulates the double-edged sword of these bamboo strips. We started this deep dive looking for a way out of the exhausting daily grind of head-on collisions, and Sun Tzu gives us a clear answer. The highest form of success is mastering the physics of your environment, understanding human psychology so deeply, and manipulating the energy so thoroughly that your opponent yields before a single punch is thrown. You tilt the hill.
You win without fighting. But as we've explored the tools required to do that, the systemic deception, the legalist calculation are dangerous. There is a quote from a Ming Dynasty commentator mentioned in the Giles translation that I think offers the perfect philosophical counterweight to all of this.
Oh, I like that. What does he say?
He wrote, "Emerge from the mud untainted. Understand cunning, but do not use it."
Understand cunning, but do not use it. That is powerful, because the art of war gives you an X-ray view into the anatomy of ruthless strategy. It shows you exactly how the Gordon Geckos of the world operate, but it is entirely up to you how you apply that knowledge.
Exactly. It's a choice.
You can use it as a sword to manipulate people, or you can use it as a shield. You could use it to spot the doomed spy campaigns, to see the wild geese rising from the forest, so you can quietly sidestep the ambush without losing your own soul in the process.
It's about having the vision to see the trap so you don't have to fight your way out of it.
Precisely. So I want to leave you with a very practical challenge. The next time you find yourself locked in a tense situation, maybe a coworker is aggressively baiting you into an argument in a meeting, trying to force a head-on collision.
We've all been there.
Instead of pushing back and yelling until you're blue in the face, look for the energy. What happens if you don't fight? What happens if you calmly agree with their underlying premise, but entirely reframe the conclusion? You rob them of their combative momentum, you tilt the hill, you let their boulder roll harmlessly past you, and you neutralize the attack without throwing a single punch. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey and for listening to Book In Podcast, The Library of Successes.
It has been an absolute pleasure.
The next time you feel the urge to brace for impact, remember the bamboo strips. Don't fight harder. Redraw the map.